Well, it's been a long, incredibly fun journey, but the 2021 NBA playoffs have officially come to a close. Congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks for ending their championship drought by taking it home over the Phoenix Suns, and an even bigger congratulations goes to Giannis Antetokounmpo for playing some of the most dominant basketball I've seen in my lifetime. With that being said though, the topic of today isn't focusing specifically on the Bucks, but instead it's going to be a look back at the playoffs as a whole and what we've learned from them. Basketball fans are definitely very reactionary in the moment, and hot takes fly left and right after every single game. So today we'll be identifying the 5 most glaring takes that have been pushed by the masses as a result of the playoffs, and we'll go over why they're overreactions and not completely truthful. Before we start though, it turns out about 61% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first overreaction we'll be discussing right now is that because the Suns lost the finals, Chris Paul is solidified as a choker. Chris Paul has been in the league for a long time now, and for years, he's been a player where you either love him or you hate him. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, he's one of the greatest players to ever play the point guard position, and in many ways it is very easy to like him. However, at the same time, he's attracted an equally large amount of haters in his day because he has a history of making some dirty plays, flopping, and coming up short in big moments. The one thing he has yet to accomplish in his historically great career is obviously winning a championship, and this was clearly his best chance at tackling that feat. But after the Suns went up 2-0 in the series, they just lost 4 games in a row, and once again Chris Paul remains ringless. Without context, obviously, Chris Paul is going to be the target of some slander online because of how polarizing he is, and by no means am I saying that he played outstanding in the remainder of the series and isn't deserving of any criticism at all. But in the end, it just became so obvious that the Bucks were the better team, and the Suns got outplayed. Giannis was on an absolute tear, Chris Middleton played out of his mind, and Drew Holiday was making life a living hell with his defense, so the reason why I think this is an overreaction is more so about giving the Bucks proper credit for being better than it is about the Suns seemingly choking it away. The next overreaction we'll be discussing is the notion that injuries ruined the playoffs this year. This year, we saw a lot of star talent suffer injuries during the big dance, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. On the list of talent that suffered injuries and missed time, it includes Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and more, which is definitely disappointing for the fans who wanted to see the biggest names in basketball battle it out at full strength. I also can't even lie to you and pretend that rebuking the claim by saying that injuries are a part of the game, and that it's normal is accurate, because while we definitely do see big name players get injured every year, I really don't think the quantity of those players has ever been as large as it was this season. However, despite all of this, the point of this is to rebuke the claim that these injuries ruined the playoffs, and I do still believe this year's postseason was as fun as it's ever been objectively. There was legitimate parity, the series were unpredictable, we saw major upsets, we saw comebacks, and we saw historically great performances. Giannis Antetokounmpo just played one of the best finals series of all time. The young Atlanta Hawks took the league by storm by advancing all the way to the conference finals. The Clippers made major comebacks in 2 series in a row and advanced further than they have ever done in their franchise's history. Role players were even emerging into stars in some series. Sure, all of the superstars being healthy would have been fun, but I still think we got a pretty damn good product out of the floor this year in spite of it, and most of the biggest games were close and entertaining. The next overreaction we'll be discussing is that Trae Young was carrying the Hawks to all of their success. The Hawks were arguably the biggest and most pleasant surprise in this year's playoffs, as they improbably eliminated the 76ers in 7 games to advance to the conference finals, and in that span, Trae Young stole the show. Now, the point of this discussion is by no means to discredit Trae for anything he did, and he was absolutely phenomenal for sure, but it's more so to give credit to the team around him as well, because they never really seemed to get any of the praise for what they did to help the Hawks. John Collins has been a young player who has put up big numbers in the past when the Hawks were a lottery team, and there were plenty of people questioning whether or not he could actually contribute to winning teams, or if his production was empty. So when he sacrificed his own individual production this year to make tons of winning plays, such as crashing the offensive glass, playing hard-nosed defense, and making the most of his touches this year, he undoubtedly has impressed scouts around the league. On top of that, players like Clint Capella played incredible defense, Bogdan Bogdanovic and Kevin Huerter had very timely offensive explosions throughout, and Danilo Gallinari has been reliable as always, as he always is. The Hawks were a pretty underrated team coming into the playoffs, but they proved they can compete with anyone. The next overreaction we'll be discussing is that because of the way Ben Simmons played in the Hawks series, he no longer has any value around the league. Nobody has seen their status amongst the fans decrease more than Ben Simmons after his horrific free throw shooting and his unwillingness to attack on offense. Trade rumors emerged from the second the Sixers got eliminated, and the way he's discussed, you would think he's an absolute scrub now, but the reality is that even with those glaring weaknesses, there are definitely plenty of teams that would love to bring him in because of what he does well, as they would be under the impression that he's just not a great fit with the Sixers, and he would be a better fit elsewhere. The things that he's always been elite at are pushing the pace in transition, finding open teammates and creating tons of open shots for them, passing them the ball, and locking down on defense. And in the playoffs, he did all 3 of those things incredibly well still. He's the best perimeter defender in the NBA, he's a 3-time All-Star, and players with that kind of resume still hold plenty of value. The Sixers very well may trade him this summer, but they won't move him unless it's a trade that makes sense for their championship aspirations right now. He's not going to be traded for a few role players, he won't be moved for future draft picks, and if the right deal doesn't present itself, he absolutely might remain in Philly to try to prove himself next year. Everyone seems to think a trade is a sure thing, but I disagree unless a deal that legitimately improves the Sixers presents itself. And finally, the last overreaction we'll be discussing today is that Rudy Gobert's defense is fraudulent because of how the series against the Clippers ended. Rudy Gobert is now a 3-time winner of the Defensive Player of the Year award, after taking it home again this season, and when the Jazz got eliminated by the Clippers in Game 6 of that second-round series, it was very tough to not look at Gobert being one of the biggest factors for that loss. The Clippers went to a small ball lineup to space the floor and take Rudy out of his comfort zone as a rim protector, and it worked perfectly. I by no means have agreed necessarily with every time Gobert has won the DPOY award, but it doesn't change the fact that his work as a rim protector is unparalleled in today's NBA. He's not a fraud in that regard at all, because his presence in the paint makes the Jazz the dominant defensive team that they have become, and he makes things incredibly tough for anybody around the basket. The playoffs are all about matchups, and honestly, the Clippers deserve a ton of credit crafting a rotation that can take advantage of the Gobert matchup, because running small ball lineups runs the risk of being abused on the glass and inside, but they battled hard to make sure those advantages for the Jazz were minimal, while making Rudy Gobert incredibly uncomfortable out on the perimeter. For what he is, he's a historically great rim-protecting anchor, but you can't really blame Gobert for his work on the perimeter, because that's not typically what he's expected or really used to doing. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about this year's playoffs and any overreactions you've seen as a result. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.